Nintendo games might be rated E for everyone, but if we wanted to pull off a heist, which Nintendo characters would we want on the job? Let's get our crew together and go to work. Stick around and we'll see how it all goes down in the end. And we have to start out by picking our player number 1, the leader / brains. If you want to pull off a large-scale heist, you'll need someone who can give strategic orders, predict possible outcomes, both good and bad, and keep a cool head. So for a leader, we have a few candidates: Fox, Ridley, or Void Kong. Each of them is very different. Fox has led his own squadron on space missions to take down Andros, and is proven more than capable of stepping out of a ship to handle business up close and personal. Ridley, on the other hand, is the ruthless leader of the Space Pirates, a cruel and merciless fighter who's survived and plotted against Samus countless times. You really can't put a price on experience like that. And finally, Void Kong has led Voidco, managing to recruit even Donkey Kong to his side in Emerald Rush mode. He's also gone toe-to-toe with DK using his own tech, proving he's no slouch in combat either. They're all solid choices, but for a heist, we need someone morally flexible and capable of directing others. Fox is too bound by his moral code and too focused on stopping Andros, and Ridley goes way too far in the opposite direction. Nobody would want to team up with him, and that leaves Void Kong as the perfect balance, able to rally others to his side while staying out of direct danger himself to call the shots. So with Void Kong as our selected leader, we need to fill out his team, starting with the gunmen. We're gonna need a couple shooters ready to hold it down with more firepower. This is a heist, after all. Nintendo has quite a few options for experienced gun users, like Samus, Wolf, and the Inklings. Samus's arm cannon and ship are definitely able to provide some firepower to help our team out, and Wolf's own spaceship and blaster on the ground can help out as well. Plus, Wolf is a sharpshooter with a tactical mind. There might be an ego issue with him, but the guy knows how to clear a room. As for the Inklings, they're literally treating gunplay and war as a game, and their ink-based powers of hiding inside any ink puddles they make can definitely help. But of course, we can't forget about King K. Rool and his blunderbuss. With his sheer bulk and strength, he can easily beat back anyone who gets too close, or just suck them up with his cannon and blast them away. Now, in the end, the Inklings are definitely stable with guns, but we feel like that when they have to use real guns and realize that red fluid that flies out of bodies isn't ink, they're just not gonna have the stomach for it. Likewise, Samus is definitely not above working for a paycheck, but dealing with humans instead of evil aliens would be too far for her. So that leaves us with the morally flexible yet still somewhat honorable Wolf, and the eons more cruel King K. Rool. So with our armed enforcers selected, our next role we gotta fill is the explosives expert. Whether it's taking out enemies or just blowing through walls to make entrances or escapes, we need someone who can bring the boom. And this role was a bit tougher to fill for Nintendo characters, surprisingly, since most of them are more up close and personal fighters and don't exactly specialize in bombs. Mr. Game & Watch has handled explosives before in games like Mario's Bombs Away, as well as Bomb Sweeper and Safe Buster. And then there's the Ancient Minister, who oversaw the use of subspace bombs, but we don't need to tell you that blowing everything to pieces isn't ideal when we actually want the loot inside to survive. So finally, we have Bowser. Thanks to his ties with King Babam and the countless Babams under his command, the big man has access to explosives of every shape and size. And on top of that, his fire breath gives him a unique edge. He can just straight up burn through obstacles with a single exhale. When it came down to it, the Koopa King was really the only option. But now we need a good hacker to add to the team. Whether it's surveillance or sabotage, someone's gonna need to be ready to hack into the technology surrounding whatever place this heist takes place at. This wasn't even a contest once we realized Marina was an option. She's just way too skillful to be ignored. Hacking into the underground metro to help Agent 8, and creating her own cyber world meant to reverse sanitization from brainwashed octolings, and fixing it when it got corrupted after being freed from controller VM. There are other decent tech-savvy options like Professor Sato and Turo, who have done some great research about Pokemon and created technology that far outlived them. And Claus created essentially a virtual reality where he was a god. However, they're more general tech-savvy people, and we're looking for tech professionals who can specialize in specific areas. Marina is just too specifically perfect for this role. trouble. So we finally got to the safe, but how can we get into it? Enter the safe cracker, someone who can unlock the locks and crack the safes. The Roach and Nabbit are our two most obvious choices, with the two of them being career thieves. Wario is just as determined to find the goods, but his method of getting into the safe is more just punch as hard as possible, or play a touchscreen minigame, which we can't see the guards here hiding their loot behind, so he's not the best pick. Between the Roach and Nabbit, Nabbit is more of the classical thief, preferring to steal stuff that is already out in the open. The Roach, however, has not only more experience stealing guarded stuff like the treasure chest holding Dark Nebula, but also has more than enough tools to chip away at any safe. So we're dropping Nabbit in favor of the more versatile the Roach. Okay, so we got someone who can get us the goods, but how do they leave? We're gonna need a getaway driver who can drive the team out of the danger zone. They're gonna have to be skillful to survive driving in any insane conditions under deadly circumstances. Someone reliable who never runs into any trouble and never needs any assistance getting others off his tail. The only option is Slippy Toad. Yeah, maybe if we were suicidal. You know we're rolling with Captain Falcon. That said, we still need some muscle, some brute strength just in case things go south. 3 picks immediately sprung to mind: Ridley, DK, and Wario. We have to bring back Ridley and Wario again, as despite their previous failings, they're still more than capable and have a rather, no, I don't think I'll die today attitude. With Ridley being the cunning god of death who can take as much damage as he deals, and Wario being able to just not die as long as he doesn't feel like it. Just look at how powerful Wario was in Shake It with his punches, shaking the world around him. DK is another solid pick here. I mean, he's a monkey who can tear up the terrain and throw it at enemies and even punch the moon out of orbit just to hit somebody he didn't like. Though in the end, we feel like Ridley would get way too sidetracked seeing how many corpses he could stack up. And we're looking for professionals here, not psychopaths. And DK wouldn't quite understand the stakes of the operation and would head to the nearest break room to eat whatever bananas the staff brought to work for lunch that day. Wario's love for money means that he's gonna want a good cut of the profit, but the guy is a tank. Add in that greedy profit motive and you've got yourself some dedicated muscle. Now, lastly, we're gonna fill one final role for a character who didn't necessarily fit any of the other areas perfectly. It's time for us to pick our wild card. Wild cards will need to be able to provide some sort of zest in our heist, being able to either fill in any roles when needed or provide some sort of benefit that doesn't fit the standard roles. For potential wildcard picks, we have Kirby, Tom Nook, and Tingle. Kirby constantly gets billed as the strongest character in Nintendo's history, so that can't be ignored, you know, alongside his childish and friendly personality. But that's kind of the point. He may be super powerful, but he's also super playful and nice. So good luck actually getting him to do something as immoral as pull off a heist. If anything, Kirby would sabotage this operation for the greater good. Tom Nook is an absolutely bizarre pick for a heist, but when it comes to making money, this raccoon seems to have his paws in everything. He's smart, he knows about money, he's a businessman, so he knows how operations work, and you know this guy is cooking his own books and laundering some money. On top of that, the guy knows how to negotiate. That may very well come in handy for getting out of some tough spots. And then there's Tingle, chaos in a green suit. He's eccentric enough to distract guards without even trying. One second he's floating in on a balloon like some tunic-wearing pervert, and the next, everyone's too weirded out to remember they're supposed to be protecting the vault. That said, this guy might be too much of a wild card. He brings too much attention. So we're gonna go with Tom Nook for this one. Nook's smart, he knows how businesses work, and he's surprisingly ruthless for a character from a cozy animal game. So with that said, our team is assembled. We have Void Kong as our leader, Wolf and King K. Rool as our gunmen, Bowser as our explosives expert, Marina as our hacker, The Roach as our safecracker, Captain Falcon as our getaway driver, Wario as our muscle, and Tom Nook as our wild card. With our team put together, it's heist time, baby. Let's go to work. Intel suggests this shadowy corporation has been arming the villains of the Nintendo universe with weaponry and tools of destruction the likes of which we've never seen before. Naturally, Naturally, toys this powerful don't come cheap. They're selling them for top dollar, whether in digital currency, cold hard gold, or stacks of cash stashed away in safe rooms across the complex. Void Kong stays on comms, voice masked through a modifier, while Marina feeds him intel on the building and everyone inside. Captain Falcon waits in the driver's seat, ready to peel out at a moment's notice. Wolf and King K. Rool touch down on the rooftop, preparing to cut their way down through the facility. Outside, Bowser holds position, ready to blow through the walls for a straight shot to the vault, with DeRoach right on his tail. Wario revs his bike, aiming it at the front doors, while Tom Nook sits with Marina, eyes on the cameras, ready to step in with some business talk if needed. The waiting was tense as Marina worked to take the systems offline, while Void Kong stayed careful not to let King K. Rool realize he was the one pulling the strings. But once the cameras went dark and Marina pulled up the floor plans, the green light was given.
The operation is underway.
Wolf and King K. Rool crashed through the rooftop door, making their way down. The guards scrambled to the upper floors, leaving Bowser the perfect opening to blast through the walls and charge towards the vault, with DeRoach cleaning up any stragglers left behind. Things are going well so far, a little too well. So how does it all fall apart? Simple. It's Wario time. Turns out Wario had studied the heist notes a little too closely. Realizing he was surrounded by Nintendo characters chasing Nintendo-themed spoils, he wanted to know who was really trustworthy and what loot was worth grabbing. Before the mission, he pulled 9-Volt aside for a quick briefing, running down the crew from most trusted to least trusted. In the process, he learned the one detail Void Kong wanted buried: his history with King K. Rool and the fact that Kong didn't want the reptile knowing he was in charge. So what does Wario do? Calls K. Rool over the walkie-talkie, laughing that Void Kong had been stringing him along like an employee. Furious, K. Rool stops the heist in its tracks, smashes through a window and rockets to the getaway van with his propeller pack, only to find Void Kong at the controls. Grabbing him by the throat, K. Rool slams him straight back into the building, hijacking command. As for Void Kong, if the punch didn't kill him, the guards who immediately swarmed and dragged him off for questioning surely finished the job. Despite losing his gunmen, the betrayal actually gave the guards another location to focus on. By sheer serendipity, they thinned themselves out, giving Wolf some breathing room as he continued his descent from the rooftop. Meanwhile, Wario seized the moment to crash straight through the front door as Bowser and DeRoach advanced on the vault. Once there, DeRoach told Bowser and Wario to hold position while he got to work. He teleported into the vault to unlock it from the inside. Marina, monitoring everything from the computers, relayed to King K. Rool that DeRoach wasn't opening the vault for the crew. He was stealing the treasure for himself. Worse, he had already called in the rest of the Squeak Squad, who were now waiting on the opposite side of the building to haul the loot back to their base. Enraged by this betrayal, K. Rool stormed back into the building, joining Bowser and Wario to rip the steel door off its hinges and confront DeRoach in the act. DeRoach tried to teleport through the back wall, but Bowser blasted it open with a fire breath, cutting off his escape. The three villains clashed with the Squeak Squad, and while DeRoach put up a fight, he has battled Kirby after all. It just wasn't a fair contest. Wario's practically immune to death, King K. Rool regularly fights an ape that can punch moons out of the sky, and Bowser's main rival is Mario. The outcome was inevitable. Marina and Captain Falcon quickly realized the whole operation was spiraling out of control, especially as the three villains started thinking, why should I share the loot with them? Desperate to keep things from collapsing before the cops arrived, they called in Tom Nook to smooth things over. Nook stepped into the vaults, glanced around, and delivered a grave revelation. The gold and items inside were forgeries. The real treasures were hidden deeper underground. There was no reason to tear each other apart over counterfeit goods. Stunned into silence, the crew stood mortified, until King K. Rool turned his rage on Nook. Blaming him for not speaking up sooner, K. Rool decided that if he couldn't have real gold, he could at least have a real meal. And right then, he was in the mood for one defenseless Tanuki shopkeeper. By this point, Marina and Captain Falcon had had enough. They patched through to Wolf, warning him the mission was a failure and they were pulling out. Meanwhile, King K. Rool was already licking his chops, craving some fried teriyaki, and he knew just the perfect octopus who had led them to the wrong vault. But before he could make a move, Wario and Bowser, still disgusted after watching him devour Tom Nook, finally drew the line. Deciding King K. Rool had gone way too far, the two teamed up against him. Sensing everything was about to implode, Marina pulled her last resort. Calling the police, cops, then ordering Captain Falcon to burn rubber and get as far from the crime scene as possible. The mission seemed like a bust, at least if you were only looking for physical gains. See, Marina knew the real money wasn't in gold bars or trinkets. It was the company's credit card info, Bitcoin reserves, and digital assets. While chaos erupted around the vault, she was already busy wiring the funds into a public Inkopolis Square account, spreading the wealth among Inklings and Octolings alike to mask her tracks. As for Captain Falcon, he didn't care about the payout. He was just happy to get in some practice behind the wheel for the new F-Zero game dropping any day now. With the cops swarming in, Wolf leaps into a spaceship, strafing patrol cars to keep them back. But his display only fuels King K. Rool's madness. Snarling that no one steals his glory, he swings his blunderbuss skyward and unleashes a savage barrage. Wolf's ship is torn apart midair, the pilot screaming as it spirals into the street in a fiery explosion. King K. Rool laughing maniacally at every blast. High on the kill, King K. Rool turns his attention to the police. He storms into the open, firing wildly at squad cars, blasting officers aside, and relishing in the chaos. Sirens wail, bullets fly, but he bellows with sadistic glee, declaring the streets his personal battlefield. But for Wario and Bowser, enough was enough. Sickened by his rampage, after Nook, after Wolf, after everything, this had to end. Wario jumps on King K. Rool's back and forces open his reptilian jaws, while Bowser unleashes a torrent of fire straight down his throat. K. Rool thrashes, howling as the flames consume him from the inside, until his bull crashes to the ground in a smoking heap. And so it came down to Bowser and Wario, standing in the wreckage as an army of cops and SWAT surrounded them. Guns drawn, safety's off. The two exchanged a look, silently accepting that this was it, death by a hail of bullets. But instead, a slow clap, and then another, and suddenly the entire police line erupted into applause. The commissioner himself stepped forward, shaking their hands and praising them for their heroic citizen's arrest of King K. Rool. The next day, a full ceremony is held on the steps of City Hall. Bowser and Wario stand in front of cheering crowds, photographers snapping away as medals are pinned on their chests. The commissioner presents them with comically oversized checks for an absurd amount of money, while the press swarms them with flashing cameras. Wario is gifted a gold crown by the city, and Princess Peach arrives to confess her undying love for the Koopa King, telling him that even Mario was never this heroic. And then the cops arrested Mario for plumbing without a license. Mission technically failed, but a win's a win. So in the end, Marina made off with most of the virtual goods, cutting Captain Falcon in on the profits for keeping her alive on the move. Their mission was technically a success, digital riches safely stolen and laundered away. Bowser and Wario, on the other hand, walked away with medals, oversized checks, and a cheering crowd hailing them as heroes. Not the treasure they set out for, but in the end, public glory, riches, and Peach's royal confession weren't a bad consolation prize.